everyone, welcome to another biology video. Today we're talking about the reproductive behaviors that aid in sexual reproduction. So we've discussed the types of sexual reproduction. We've talked about the various ways various organisms go through their sexual reproduction. We've talked about the systems that help in sexual reproduction, that carry out this sexual reproduction. Now, today we're talking about reproductive behaviors. So, an important aspect of sexual reproduction is the development of behaviors that ensure fertilization. Now, without these behavior patterns, sexual reproduction would be a failure. So, without these reproductive behaviors, sexual reproduction will not be successful. Now, reproductive behaviors that bring gametes together, these reproductive behaviors that we're talking about, they could be either direct or indirect. Now, in motile animals, in animals that can move, sexual partners directly approach each other and mate, and the gametes can come together that way. So, in motile animals, that means animals that move, the sexual partners approach each other directly and mate. Now, this approach is not possible with non-motile flowering plants. We know plants cannot move around, so this approach is impossible with flowering plants. So what flowering plants do is they use external agents to carry the male gametes to the female gametes through a process called pollination. So that is the major reproductive behavior of flowering plants, pollination. So they use external agents to carry male gametes to the female gametes, and that's called pollination. So now let's talk about reproductive behavior in vertebrates. Now, for sexual reproduction to successfully take place in a species, mating must occur. That means the mating, several times mating must occur. It must occur between sexually mature males and females. That's one. Mating must occur between a sexually mature male and female. Then the next one is that mating must take place between individuals of the same species. So for the sexual reproduction to be successful and organisms to bring forth organisms of their own, offspring of their own kind, sexual reproduction, mating must occur between sexually mature males and females. Then it must take place between individuals of the same species. Then it must also be timed to occur when mature gametes are present in both mating partners, because it's these gametes that come together to form a new organism. So the mating must be timed to occur when mature gametes are present in both the male and the female. And also, mating must be timed to ensure that the offspring arrive during the favorable season, when food is plentiful and climatic conditions are mild. So, mating must be timed to ensure that the offspring arrive at the right time, at the time that is favorable for them to survive, when food is available and the climatic conditions are also favorable. Now, the reason why the mating conditions must be this way is that under these mating conditions, the chances of fertilization are high. That's one. Now, also, gamete wastage is minimal. So the wastage of gametes isn't going to be as much as when we don't have all these mating conditions satisfied. And also, offspring produced under these mating conditions tend to be healthy and fertile. And also, under these mating conditions, the young that are produced will have a high survival rate. So that's why we must have all of these mating conditions before sexual reproduction can take place. Now, evolution has been established to be the origin of all living things. So each organism evolved to produce the next organism. So over thousands of years, most sexually reproducing animals have evolved these following things for sexual reproduction. They've evolved reproductive organs, they've evolved secondary sexual characteristics, and also communication behavior patterns. They've evolved reproductive organs to carry out sexual reproduction. They've evolved secondary sexual characteristics. Then they've also evolved patterns to communicate during to initiate sexual reproduction. Now, all of this is to ensure that mating is successful and results in healthy offspring that reach maturity and reproduce. So all of these characteristics that reproducing animals have evolved is to ensure that mating is successful and results in healthy offspring that can also reach sexual maturity and reproduce. Now let's talk about breeding seasons. So in most vertebrates, mating usually occurs only during specific breeding seasons. And these breeding seasons are usually linked to the onset or to the beginning of favorable environmental conditions. So in most vertebrates, mating occurs during specific breeding seasons. And these specific breeding seasons are usually linked to the environmental conditions. So it usually comes when the environmental conditions are favorable. So thus, in the tropics, many animal species mate during the rainy season. So in the tropics, we have most of the animal species mating during the rainy season, because that is the favorable, that's the time of favorable environmental condition for that region. Then in temperate countries, the animal species mate in the spring. Now, when environmental conditions are uniformly favorable throughout the year, if in a region the environmental conditions are favorable throughout the year, the breeding seasons may be continuous. It could continue. It could be continuous. It could be non-stop. For example, we have this in domestic animals like cattle. The breeding season is continuous. Now, during the breeding seasons of these animals that are reproducing, or various animals, the gonads of sexually mature individuals start producing gametes. So this production or this activity, this is due to the release of special hormones. So the hormones trigger this production of gametes by the gonads. Now these hormones are usually triggered, this release of hormones is usually triggered by environmental conditions like increasing day length, warm temperatures, or the rains, and so on. So as a result, individuals will also now show a willingness because of this gametes that have been produced, and because of this season, the breeding season has started. So individuals will show a willingness to come together and mate. We call this sexual receptivity. So the individuals that have produced gametes, when they show willingness to mate, we call this sexual receptivity. Now this indicates the willingness to try to attract mates during courtship, through courtship behavior. So when the gonads of sexually mature individuals produce gametes, the individuals show sexual receptivity, then the sexual receptivity shows the willingness to attract mates, and they do this by courtship behavior. So we'll be stopping here for today's video. In our next video, we'll pick up from here and we'll talk about courtship behavior. We'll start talking about the various reproductive behaviors. We'll specifically talk about courtship behavior. See you in our next video.